Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are welcome with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we're diving into the Sihang Warehouse 1937, the Chinese Thermopylae. And without further ado, just like always, we're just going to dive right into it. So let's roll.
The defense of Shanghai against the Japanese during the early stages of the Second Sino-Japanese War was crucial for the Chinese war effort. Over 3 months of brutal warfare in Shanghai, described as Stalingrad on the Yangtze, would see a conclusion similar to the ancient Battle of Thermopylae, as a single battalion of 452 Chinese of the National Revolutionary Army would face 20,000 soldiers of the Imperial Japanese Army from October 26 to November 1, 1937, to defend a single warehouse. In this video, we will talk about the defense of the Sihang Warehouse, also known as the 800 Heroes.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, this was like super important because of the fact that it was a huge morale booster, and the fact that it was like one of the only times that we didn't see the Japanese army using like mustard gas and stuff like that. And if I'm not mistaken, it's because there was like a colony town like right next, like right pretty close by, so they didn't want to like go to, like, you know what I'm saying, they were afraid because this is like 1937, so they didn't want to grab anybody else into war, you know what I'm saying, around them and stuff like that. Let's see.
What began as sporadic skirmishing escalated into a full-scale battle during the Marco Polo Bridge incident on July 7, 1937. The Empire of Japan used the incident as a pretext to invade China, beginning the Second Sino-Japanese War. Beijing and the port city of Tianjin quickly fell to the IJA by August 1937. Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek needed to give his nation a fighting chance against the Empire of Japan. He reorganized the absolute cream of the crop of his forces, over 300,000 soldiers, into 20 newly formed divisions. Of these, 80,000 were German-trained divisions composed of the elite units of Chiang Kai-shek's Central Army. He sent them all to Shanghai, aiming to stall the Japanese advance and to give the Chinese government time to move vital industries to the interior. Shanghai was chosen because of the large number of Western foreign residents within the Shanghai International Settlement. Chiang Kai-shek hoped that showcasing to the Western world the plight of China would force them to finally intervene.
Unfortunately, they're still dealing with their own stuff over there with Hitler and stuff, so, and the way that they're handling him, obviously they weren't going to intervene with that, because they didn't even want war with them, so pretty sad to me when you think about it.
By the end of October 1937, Japan's superior firepower, combat effectiveness, and overwhelming air superiority had brought the Chinese of the National Revolutionary Army, NRA, to the brink of defeat within Shanghai. On October 26th, Chiang Kai-shek ordered the withdrawal of all forces in the Shanghai area, but would leave a single battalion of the 524th Regiment of the elite 88th Division behind to buy them time and canvass international support. Lieutenant Colonel Xie Jinyuan, a new commander in the 88th Division, volunteered to lead the battalion and defend the Sihang Warehouse, which the Japanese had to take to cross the river. The Sihang Warehouse was a 6-story concrete building situated in Jiabei District, just north of the Suzhou Creek, at the northwestern edge of the New Lissa Bridge. The warehouse was built jointly by 4 banks, hence the name Sihang, which means 4 banks. On the other side of the Suzhou Creek laid the Shanghai International Settlement, a neutral territory where Western foreigners resided. The fighting would take place literally just across the creek, meaning the Western viewers were forced to watch up close the heroic last stand China would make.
It's insane that they still didn't want to, evacuate out of that, because, you know what I'm saying, it's a very crazy active, war area. Like, why would you not want to evacuate? Just in case, you know what I'm saying?
It's the heroic last stand China would make in Shanghai. The 1st Battalion originally had 800 men. but casualties suffered over the course of the Battle of Shanghai reduced their strength prior to the defense of Sihang Warehouse to only 452 men. Each soldier was equipped with a Hanyang 88 or Chiang Kai-shek rifle, an 8mm Mauser, grenades, a German M1935 Stahlhelm, gas mask with some Czech ZB VX-26 light machine guns, and 4 Type 24 Maxim guns. They would be facing the 3rd IJA Division, commanded by General Iwane Matsui. Xie Jinwan consolidated his battalion's defenses inside the Sihang Warehouse, believing it would also give his men the best chance of holding out for the maximum amount of time. He also correctly judged that the IJA would not be able to use their heaviest artillery, aerial bombing, gas attacks or naval guns, in fear of accidentally hitting the international settlement. This was 1937, and the Empire of Japan was not risking an open war with the Western nations yet. On October 27th, various companies of the battalion reached the Sihang Warehouse. These men essentially volunteered for a suicide mission, and are later noted by Chiang Kai-shek to have exemplary soldierly conduct. The 1st Battalion commander was Army Major Yang Rei-fu, and their forces consisted of the 1st, 2nd and 3rd Companies and Machine Gun Company for a total of 452 men. Because of the 2 months of intense fighting in Shanghai, many of the German-trained elite troops were killed or wounded, leaving the majority of reinforcements that made up the 1st Battalion at Sihang to be garrison troops from the surrounding provinces. Many of these men were from the 5th Regiment of the Hubei Province Garrison, and thus many were also green recruits.
Yeah, pretty much meaning they were like brand new, never fought, about to fight the Japanese as their first opponent. That's crazy if you think about it. Like, you know what I'm saying? You never fought anybody, you never went to war, and imperial early 20th century Japan is who you got to fight. Good luck, you know what I'm saying?
They were also green recruits. On October 27th, news began to circulate throughout Shanghai that there were still Chinese forces resisting the Japanese in Jiabei district at the Sihang Warehouse. At 4 AM, a girl guide named Yang Hui-min learned of the battle plans from a British soldier in the international settlement and convinced the Shanghai Chamber of Commerce to deliver ammunition and supplies to the soldiers in the warehouse. They also procured a Republic of China flag for her to deliver to the soldiers. Xie deployed the 1st Company, led by Captain Tao Xingchun, on the right side of the warehouse along the Tibet Road. The 3rd Company, led by Shi Meihao, on the left, across from the Bank of Communications building, and the 2nd Company, led by Deng Ying, on the other sides. 2 heavy Type 24 Maxim machine guns were installed on the Sihang rooftop, with other machine guns spread out among the companies. A forward platoon from each company was sent out to provide an early warning of an enemy attack. Xie ordered his combat engineers to place remote detonated charges in front of the warehouse. His units were dispersed with rifles and machine guns throughout the warehouse and rooftop. They reinforced the building with bags of sand, corn and beans, and razed surrounding buildings to clear a killing field.
Shit, I'd go ahead and put some damn explosives on that bridge too, just in case, because I'm telling you, I mean, this is 20th century freaking Japan, you know, this is expansionist Japan. They're not going to just stop at a freaking, you know, neutral territory, because once they get what they want from China, they're going to take those, you know what I'm saying, like, they're not stupid.
To clear a killing field. At 7 AM, the IJA 3rd Division reached Shanghai North Railway Station, and by 1 PM was in the general vicinity of the warehouse. The first bloodshed occurred when 10 IJA soldiers were killed trying to secure fortifications around Sihang Warehouse that were rigged with explosives by the NRA. At 2 PM, an NRA platoon, led by Yin Chiu-chung, exchanged fire with around 50 IJA. By 3 PM, an IJA company launched an attack on the warehouse from the west. 3rd Company Commander Shi Meihao was shot in the face, but continued to command the defense until he was shot again in the leg. Around 70 IJA took cover in a blind spot, just southwest of the warehouse. The NRA, in response, climbed to the rooftop and threw grenades at the IJA, killing 7 and wounding 20. The initial IJA assault was a failure, and in response, they set fire to the northwest section of the warehouse where fuel and lumber were stored. By 5 p.m., the fire was put out as the IJA were busy looting the Jiabei area.
Almost seems like they just need a good, like, probably a third of their men almost on top of that roof. That way they can't have people hiding and setting fires and stuff like that and coming in, sneaking up on them and stuff like that. They can always have somebody throwing away, because inevitably that's what's going to have to be the way that they, get them out. If they can't use, planes to bombard, they can't use artillery and stuff like that,
As the IJA were busy looting the Jiabei area. At 9 p.m., Battalion Commander Yang Rei-fu decided that there would be no more IJA attacks for that day, and ordered the NRA to repair fortifications and eat their meals. No one slept that night. The NRA had 2 dead and 4 wounded, while the IJA had 17 dead and 20 wounded. At 7 a.m. on October 28th, Japanese bombers began to circle the warehouse, but did not drop any bombs for fear of hitting the international settlement. There was a sea of rising sun flags surrounding the rooftops of buildings around the Sihang Warehouse to intimidate the NRA, letting them know that they were surrounded.
I guarantee the planes are most likely for the exact same reason, to intimidate them, letting them know that they're surrounded, and they have the air superiority, so there's like no way out. That I guarantee you that they didn't care about the bombardment or any of that. They just wanted them to know, like, hey, you're give up, pretty much.
At 8 a.m., Xie gave the defenders a speech and noticed an IJA squad advancing along the Suzhou Creek. According to Yang Rei-fu's memoirs, Xie picked up a rifle and killed one of the IJA soldiers over a kilometer away, halting the squad's advance. At 3 p.m., the IJA launched a major attack on the west side of the warehouse, occupying the Bank of Communications building. They used a cannon on the north side of the warehouse, causing minor damage. The IJA did manage to cut the electricity and water supply to the warehouse. After 2 hours of exchanging fire, the IJA gave up the assault at 5 p.m, as the NRA had the high ground of the warehouse rooftop, giving them a distinct advantage. During the night, crowds emerged cheering on the defenders on the south bank of the Suzhou Creek. 10 truckloads of donated supplies from the Chamber of Commerce were brought in, taking 4 hours to unload. 3 NRA soldiers were killed by Japanese sharpshooters during the process.
That's pretty crazy that they even have a freaking audience at stuff like that. Like, could you imagine being that up close to seeing, like, battle, like actual people being shot, people, like, being crazy enough to think that, you're hopefully you're not, unlucky enough to be hit by a stray bullet or something like that. But it's even crazier that they had this freaking 4-hour stop. Obviously it's nighttime, but still 4 hours is a very long time. So definitely, especially during wartime, so.
By Japanese sharpshooters during the process. Yang Hui-min courageously ran to the warehouse to personally deliver the Republic of China flag to Xie. She asked for a list of the soldiers' names to announce to the entire country, and Xie, aware that doing so would inform the IJA of their real strength, decided to write down 800 names from the original roster of the 524th Regiment. Thus, the 800 Heroes legend was born. Before returning to the international settlement, Yang Hui-min asked what their plan was, and Xie stated, "Defend to the death." Xie also arranged with British officers in the international settlement to transport 10 heavily wounded NRA soldiers from the battle under cover of darkness. On the morning of October 29th, the Republic of China flag was hoisted on a 13-foot pole on top of the Sihang Warehouse. The NRA used a makeshift pole with 2 bamboo culms tied together and held a flag-raising ceremony, stirring a crowd of 30,000 citizens gathered in the international settlement to shout, "Long live the Republic of China." Japanese aircraft attempted to destroy the flag with strafing fire, but failed to do so, and had to flee because of the NRA firing at them from the rooftop.
Pretty sad though, if you can't hit. I mean, it's a pretty small target, but still, you would think that they'd be able to hit it, just aim straight for the building instead. But Let's see.
because of the NRA firing at them from the rooftop. At noon, the IJA mounted a large offensive on the warehouse from all directions using tankettes and cannons. The 3rd NRA Company was pushed out of their defensive lines to the base of the warehouse, then again into the warehouse itself. The IJA cannon fire had chipped away at the warehouse's structure, creating new firing ports on the windowless west wall, and the IJA attempted to scale the walls to the second floors using ladders. Xie was positioned near a window when 2 IJA soldiers managed to climb into the second floor beside him. He choked the first to death and shot the other while kicking over the ladder they used. Still, the situation was looking dire as a platoon of IJA began placing explosives to breach the west wall. 21-year-old NRA private Chen Shusheng, armed with a grenade vest, jumped from a second-story window onto the IJA platoon planting the explosives, and his suicide attack killed himself and 20 Japanese below. The fighting lasted until it got dark, with waves of IJA storming the warehouse using armored vehicles. The IJA eventually had to give up the assault, and instead began to dig a tunnel to the warehouse using an excavator. In response, posters emerged in the international settlement showcasing the movements of the
Yeah, definitely one thing that I've definitely noticed too is just the fact that we've had like I think only like probably not even 10 Chinese deaths yet, but we've had like I feel like we're well into like the 30s to 40s in deaths when it comes to the Japanese, and who knows how much wounded. So it's pretty doing like really good from this position. I'm really surprised that this building hasn't given.
Posters emerged in the international settlement showcasing the movements of the IJA to the NRA. At 7 AM on October 30th, the IJA recommenced attacks, this time with heavy artillery, approximately shooting 1 shell per second for the entire duration of the day. The NRA responded by refortifying the warehouse with more sandbags. When night approached, the IJA used floodlights to illuminate the warehouse for artillery fire to continue. Yet for all their firepower, the defenders still managed to destroy some of the IJA armored vehicles.
It almost sounds like definitely would have helped if they had some like smoke rounds or something like that. The Chinese to help them like obstruct their building and stuff like that from the artillery.
Their firepower, the defenders still managed to destroy some of the IJA armored vehicles. The international settlement pressured the IJA to stop the artillery fire as it was dangerously close to them. However, they also told the IJA that they would try to convince the NRA to cease the defense, and sent Chiang Kai-shek a petition to stop the fighting for humanitarian concerns. By this point, the defense of the Sihang Warehouse had met all its objectives. NRA forces in Shanghai had successfully been redeployed in more favorable positions in the west. The defense of the warehouse had also gained the attention of the Western nations. Chiang Kai-shek ordered a retreat of the battered regiment, and British General Telfer Smollett helped arrange it. The 524th Regiment would retreat to the international settlement by crossing the New Lesser Bridge and then rejoin the 88th Division fighting in West Shanghai. The 3rd IJA Division commander, Matsui Iwane, agreed and promised to let the NRA retreat, but later would go back on this promise.
I mean, of course they did. It's Japan. They're almost as, not to be mean or anything like that, but I mean, this is early 20th century Japan, so I mean, I'm just trying to say it. They're just as bad as freaking Germany when it comes to anything promises and stuff like that, especially when it comes to promises with Chinese diplomats, because for some reason they didn't like them. But yeah.
At midnight on November 1st, Xie led the retreat of 376 men out of the warehouse and over the New Lesser Bridge into the international settlement. The NRA had 27 wounded by this point, and those who could not make the retreat volunteered to stay behind and man the machine guns on the rooftop to cover the retreat. 10 NRA were wounded by IJA sharpshooter fire during the crossing. At 2 AM on November the 1st, the retreat was complete, ending the defense of the Sihang Warehouse. The NRA had 10 deaths and 37 wounded, and the IJA had an estimated 200 killed with several hundred wounded.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's not, I mean, this does nothing for international pool or anything. I think all they do is condemn them or something like that. And essentially they do exactly what they did in Europe. And if they're doing what they're doing in Europe by giving all this land to Germany, I mean, what do you really think is going to happen all the way out east? You know what I'm saying? They're not going to do anything, for being real here.
After the defeat, the British troops seized their weapons and placed the NRA soldiers under arrest, as the IJA threatened to invade the international settlement if they were allowed to leave the area. Chiang Kai-shek promoted every defender by a rank, and awarded Xie Jinwan and Yang Rui-fu the Order of the Blue Sky and White Sun. The media capitalized on the defense of the Sihang Warehouse and lauded the 800 heroes as national heroes, even creating the patriotic song "China Will Not Perish" about them. However, the Western support only came in the form of verbal condemnation of Japan. Only Germany and the Soviet Union provided substantial aid to China prior to the outbreak of World War II in Europe. The fate of the 800 heroes is quite...
Yeah, something still tells me, though, that had to feel like a straight ticking time bomb for the international, or the people in international places, and Hong Kong and over there and stuff like that. Because, I mean, just think about it, like, you see what they're doing up north in Manchuria, you see what they're doing now on the borders of China. You know they're not going to stop. Like, that's just a ticking time bomb. I would have been and got my family out of there, back to wherever it is. Like, I mean, obviously that they were probably born there, so it's probably a little bit harder. But you know what I'm saying. It's just what I was saying.
Two in Europe. The fate of the 800 heroes is quite tragic. They became known as the Lost Battalion Barracks, trapped for 3 years within the international settlement. Wang Jinwei's collaborationist government made numerous offers to Xie Jinyuan to release his men, but he refused them. On April 24, 1941, Xie Jinyuan was assassinated at 5 a.m. by Sergeant He Ding-chung, who was working for Wang Jingwei. Xie Jinyuan's funeral was attended by over 100,000 people, and he was posthumously made Brigadier General of the NRA. After the Pearl Harbor attack and the declaration of war on the Allies, the Japanese forces occupied the international settlement and captured the soldiers still stuck there. Most were shipped to Hangzhou and Shaolingweir to do hard labor. 36 soldiers were sent to Papua New Guinea to do hard labor, and by the end of the war, they overpowered their Japanese captors and imprisoned them. Today, the warehouse still stands in Shanghai as the Sihang Warehouse Memorial Museum, which opened in 2015. There you can see the remains of the building, accompanied by details of the battle, photographs, maps, recollections, and wax models of the defenders. The battle was also made into a film in 2020, titled The 800, which became the second highest grossing film of 2020. Once again, thanks to Call of War for sponsoring this video.
I gotta see when that was made, because I know that there was I would definitely love to see that one though. That actually sounds like an amazing movie, because it was an amazing story. So, without further ado though, guys, thank you again for joining me on another episode of Mike's Intellectual Corner. If you guys liked it, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you guys when I see you. I'm out. Peace!